to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. And today, your treat is Amanda Lien, who helps people share their story. And before we get into all of that, we're going to get to know who Amanda is by her giving us 3 words that describe who she is. Hello, Amanda, and welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. 3 words. That's a lot to unpack right out of the gate. I would say enthusiastic, passionate, and weird, but like in the best way. Weird, affectionate.
Give us a little bit of a story, especially behind the last one.
Okay. So I fell into my love of storytelling from a very young age. I was that kid who checked out, stacks of books from the library 2 feet high and read voraciously. And then obviously, as a lot of kids who grew up as readers, I became a writer. And I joke that I stay weird in a healthy way by continuing what I've been doing since I was a kid and hanging out on the internet in spaces where people talk about the books that they love. My generation calls it fandom. And so I'm still a weird fandom person. I'm a very professional writer and storyteller by day. And then by night, I'm some guy hanging out on the internet, screaming in all caps about stories I love. And I don't think that's going to go anywhere. And that passion and enthusiasm clearly jumps out everywhere I go, because life's too short to be anything but yourself. It's more fun that way.
I so agree with that. I do have to concur with you because I was that weird kid. I was weird in different ways. I was very nerdy. I do have to tell you, I did not enjoy reading when I was younger. And that is probably because my parents were very academia, and I kid you not, for every Christmas, every birthday, I got a book as a gift. And there was always emphasis of like, oh my gosh, look at this book and look at the beautiful illustrations. And I was like, can I just get like a pair of jeans like my friends do, or like something fun than a book?
Right. Oh yeah. I asked for books, but like I was weird. I was weird.
Well, you got to tell you, this has changed, and now I love books. And we did give away some of my beautiful books with illustrations because my parents really went out of their way to really get amazing books. I have some of them. But I probably started loving reading in my 30s. That was weird because I was nerdy and I was always studying, and I guess I wasn't so much fun. I don't know. But I'll tell you, like you said it, I own my nerdiness now. I am fascinated by the body, and I can talk to you about the body and the mindset and psychology and all of that good stuff and read books, and I own it. And, my husband even makes fun of me, and he's like, oh, you want to talk about the stars in the sky? And I'm like, oh, yeah, do you want to? And he goes, just joking, babe.
Oh, come on now.
But, I think there is power and empowerment when you own who you are. And that's actually the topic that you and I connected to. And it's the topic of authenticity. And I have to tell you, when I thought about recording this episode, one thing I thought is, I wonder if any younger kids or younger people are listening to this podcast, because I will tell you, for example, middle school was not a good time for me. I was an awkward kid. I was the nerd of the class. Well, then I started developing curves. I was the nerd with the big butt. It was just like not a good place to be. And I did not own it. Instead, I retrieved and I was in my own world until about 8th grade, when I went into a different school, and I was really embraced by my classmates, and I started kind of letting my true self shine. And like I said, now, like in my 40s, I'm owning it, baby. It's all about being authentic.
So true.
So let's talk about the power of authenticity. What has been your experience in terms of how life changes when you're staying true to yourself?
Oh, yeah. So I, like you, middle school was a bad time for me. I was homeschooled growing up. So my parents chose to keep me at home and teach me. They were both former teachers, but I've been chronically ill my entire life. And so I would have been too sick to be in school. And they were kind of like, oh, well, our kid's going to be out of school more than she's in. We're qualified to teach her. Let's just teach her at home to make sure she gets good education. But the side of that was, kind of a byproduct was I didn't I felt like in middle school, I felt like kids my age were all reading from a playbook that I never got a copy of. I had church, I had dance. That was how I made friends, but I was really bad at it. And when you add that to, having anxiety, it just didn't go well for me. And I didn't really understand that there was nothing wrong with being myself. I figured that I just had to conform and be better and like shape myself into a certain mold, and then people would like me. And then I got to college and was kind of like, well, this tactic hasn't worked out for me from middle school to the end of high school. Let's try something else. And that something else just was choosing to be myself, which I can dress it up however I want in terms of, because I'm a wordsmith. It was not, in that moment, it was not a radical act of self-acceptance. It was me being too tired and too burnt out on quote unquote playing the social game to care about trying anymore, which is much less sexy than I could dress it up as. But it's the truth. I kind of just decided I'm sick of this. Pretending to be someone I'm not hasn't gotten me anything. I'm just going to be whoever I want to be authentically, because that's what serves me best. And then over time, as I became a more confident version of myself, it became, well, maybe by being what I'm really like, I can empower and encourage other people, especially in my generation, to also act the same, because we live in a society where everything is filtered, everything is dressed up, everything is hyper monetized. I spend probably too much time on TikTok, and it's just a case study in how much effort people put into making everything look cookie cutter aesthetic perfect. And I found that the content that resonates with me is the content that's not that. It's people living their lives authentically and loudly and weirdly. And that's what endears me to them, because that's real people. And I tried to be a real person. And I think that that also serves me well professionally, because clients come to me asking me to ghostwrite for them, asking me to write marketing copy for their business, asking me to capture their voice, their tone, their vision. In order to do that, I need them to be themselves in front of me so I can truly capture that. And by being the way that I am, being at ease, just sitting and chatting like I'm talking to the besties, as the kids say, it puts them visibly relaxed and visibly at ease. And I think that helps them give me what I need to do to turn out great copy. And I think that if what I'm meant to do on this planet is just be myself, and by example, empower and encourage other people, especially my fellow women, other, people that are maybe encouraged societally to not be authentically themselves because that puts them at an inherent disadvantage, then I'm very happy to just keep doing that.
Yeah, there's so many things that you say that I can relate to. And I would say in college, I let a little bit more of my true self shine out. I was still nerdy, but a lot more of my fun side came out, and I had a great time in college. And then I got into the workforce. And that was also an interesting time, because especially one of my first managers was very conservative, and I am very much a free spirit. And again, I was reflecting this morning thinking, oh my gosh, like there was so much shaping that was happening for me to fit in that box. I conformed, and it was so interesting because especially in my 20s and I would say early 30s, I would go and I would be that professional, suited up, speak the way you're supposed to, not show as much of my like vibrant and crazy personality. And then at night, I would go crazy dancing and that fun Maria, that real true Maria, that was way too much for the office. And that continued a long time. And now that I've claimed my rebellious self, I'm like, wow, there is so much conditioning that happens. And I do have to say, the conditioning is not poorly intended. In my case, my parents loved me. They gave me opportunities. They wanted the best for me, right? So they wanted me to do academically because that's what they knew. My managers, the way they groomed me because they saw potential in me, and they wanted me to go. They knew what was societally acceptable in the workforce. And I think what we don't realize is that when we take out the authenticity out of someone, let's take that in a professional setting, like you brought it up, we take so much of that pure childlike vibration energy that can bring so much innovation, so much fun, so much vibrancy to a work environment, rather than like, this is how you behave in the office, this is how you drop in the office, this is how you comb your hair in the office. And it's just like constraint. We as humans are not meant to fit in the box. We're supposed to be who we are and show that energy. But as you go through the different life stages, and like you said, kids at school, I was called the nerd, and that is not a cool name to be called when you're
Nope.
12 years old.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed studying, and to this day I enjoy studying, and to this day I
Yeah.
like to analyze stuff. And I would tell you, when I did my MBA, my besties at school were the engineering guys.
Oh, yeah.
I could get along with them because we were all nerdy. And it's interesting to see how I think also awareness is becoming part of, are you staying true and authentic to yourself? Because for me, I thought I was, until I was like, holy cow, I have been presenting this whole time trying to fix into a box. And exactly to your point, Amanda, when you said that when you are empowered, it's like you give permission to others to say, you know what? Yes, that I like her. Like, I want to be like that. Be free like that. We empower those.
It's about psychological safety, I think. And like to your point in the workplace, I've had, right now I work for myself, but in past roles I've had where I've worked in a leadership capacity, whenever I'm leading a team, one of my first priorities is ensuring that they know that there's that level of psychological safety with me. Yes, on paper, I'm your manager, but we're both human beings. I maybe have more experience than you or whatever that led me to be your manager instead of your peer, but we're all just people. And I remember several instances of, having someone that I technically, oversaw come to me and clearly not having a great time in their personal life. And I never pried because that's not my business, but just kind of subtly, even just letting them know, hey, you can be however you need to be around me. This is our standing meeting, our weekly check-in, or whatever. But like, you're a person with a life and struggles and stuff going on outside of work. And sometimes that seeps in, and that's okay. We're all human beings. And if you need a mental health day, if you need me to cut you some slack, if you need a half day, like, here's the company resources you can take. If you need support, these are all things I'm offering without judgment, because we're just human beings trying to get by. And I think that I don't know, I'm no scientist, but I feel like there's a direct correlation between the amount of fitting into a box we're quote unquote supposed to, as told by society, have, and a lack of empathy, especially in places like the workplace. We're taught that it's unprofessional to discuss certain topics, act anything other than perfect and polished and chipper, but not too chipper, cheerful, but not too cheerful. Especially as women, we're told that that's, infantilizing. And when we're told to shave off all these elements of being a person, that leads, I believe, to a direct drop in empathy, in terms of empathy toward our fellow humans, empathy toward people that we work with or that we supervise. And I do not care much for that. And I think it's the same with, personal friendships as well. When we can't be our true selves around our friends, are they really our friends? I don't think so. And I found that, I did not have a true deep friendship with someone until 3 years ago. And I'm in my mid-20s, just for context. So, that's a long life to have with not really any. I had superficial friendships, yeah, but my first real, true, deep friendship was made 3 years ago. And this person has done everything from, let me stay with them for 3 weeks while I was seeking medical care, to gone with me to doctor's appointments. I've supported them through all sorts of the same sort of thing. And again, I don't think you can cultivate that kind of relationship without empathy and without the willingness to put yourself out there and be yourself and see what happens. But there is a level, I think, of psychological safety that comes along with that. Again, not a psychologist by any means, but for all of the articles that I've read and all the research I've done into the concept of psychological safety, a lot of it is just rooted in basic human empathy. And I think that there's a pro and a con to the digital age. And rich of me to talk, I'm in the generation that embraces it the most. And I think that we have so much more freedom to be ourselves because we have the internet, but I think we also run the risk of losing that empathy, because if everyone's just a little box on a screen, then we forget that there's like a real human being with a whole internal world on the other side. And then that can, degrade that sense of empathy. So it's really like a, flip a coin. There's a pro and a con to everything. Not to be an internet apologist, because I do love the internet. It's where I find all my best friends, apparently. But, there's something to be aware of in terms of like, yes, you can be your authentic self, but don't let authenticity, the guise of it anyway, give you permission to be a jerk. That's like the one thing that I always like caveat it with, is like, you can be authentic, but you cannot be authentically a jerk. That's crossing the line.
Well, yeah, I think you touch on so many important points. The one I want to go on first is the survival. Fitting in is part of our survival mode. When a baby is born, it relies on those around it to take care of it, because it cannot do what it's supposed to do, feed itself, change itself. And then, when those same people say, well, that's good, that's bad, that's when our conditioning starts, because we are relying on the parents or guardians or whoever is raising up to teach us, and we start assigning meaning to things based on the way we were conditioned. So you and I could assign a very different meaning to the exact same thing based on the way we were raised, and that continues as we go through growing up. I think another very key point that you brought up, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, because I think that is something we have to talk about, is all of those boxes that are happening in the workplace. I am now an entrepreneur. I do come from a corporate experience, and yes, I do understand there are certain rules you have to follow, right? Sure. However, we have so many rules that we are forgetting to be human. You have to say, sometimes I'll get a message from a mail that would say, "You look beautiful," followed by a message that says, "I hope it's okay to say that," or a paragraph that says, "I just want to make sure." So it's like a disclaimer of like, I am not being inappropriate. I just want to say you look beautiful. We have gone away from that normal human connection, to where it's okay for me to say, "Amanda, you look beautiful today." And all I'm saying is, you look beautiful. I don't have, you don't need to hyperanalyze it. You don't need to think of like, anything else about it. And I do agree with you, like with the birth of AI now, which is great. I'm glad we have the advances. I'm glad we had the phones. However, how much of that is taken away from our human connection? Right? It's one thing for us to have an authentic conversation. It's another thing if we're texting and my text is going through AI or some chat and being improved so that I can talk to you. That's losing connection. And the same thing in the office. I mean, I will tell you, I know other coaches who say, do not establish a personal relationship with the client. I disagree. Because when you come here as a human being, and with the type of I do, I will see what you're carrying, whether it's sadness or happiness, or with ate crap, sleep. That's going to reflect in your body and the way. So yeah, I do think we're pulling away from being human, because we're getting so boxed and so constrained, and we don't even interact anymore in person. Like the younger generation, the generation of my daughter, they prefer to be on the phone talking to each other than to be next to each other interacting. And there's benefit, because now you can talk to your friend who are on the other part of the world. And back in the day, like to call back home was super expensive, and only was, hey, bye. And now I can talk for an hour to my cousin, and it's free. So there are benefits, but I think also that awareness that you bring up of, are we staying true to ourselves? And also in interactions, are we staying true to ourselves, or are we trying to fit into that interaction? And are we restricting what we say, sharing how we feel? Of course, with the appropriate audience. That doesn't mean just go, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I think, to your point, kind of to two of your points, because they kind of dovetail in, my closest friend lives 3,000 miles away from me. And so a lot of our friendship was, especially during the pandemic, when we met during the height of lockdown in 2020, was conducted over text or video call. But I've since been, out all those 3,000 miles to visit in person with them. And it's wonderful to have that augmentation of, when we're apart, we have the instant connection if we want it, but then it is augmented by spending time in person. And when we they live in California, we went to see the California redwoods, which was awesome. And I felt very tiny. They're insanely tall. Reading about in a textbook is not comparison to seeing how big they are. But anyway, when we were there, we ended up chatting with a couple of the park rangers at the state park there. And one of them asked me what I do for a living. And when I brought it up, the first question he asked me was, with the caveat of, hopefully this doesn't offend you, but how do you feel about AI and the way that it's changing the way people write and the way people communicate with each other? And I gave the answer that I always give, which is, I think it's a great tool. I think tools like ChatGPT are not inherently evil or bad. I don't think that anything is inherently evil or good, but I know that my clients, the people that I serve with my skill set, they come to me because they don't want the lack of human touch that AI can sometimes provide. They come to me asking me to please not use those tools for their content because they want it to feel human generated, maybe even a little bit imperfect. There is still a market for a lack of polish and a wealth of authenticity, because brands, entrepreneurs, small businesses, they recognize what I think more people would do well to recognize, that human beings want to hear from humans. We know when we're being sold to by a computer, and we don't like that. We want people to connect with our brand, our story, our words, our, whatever we're, marketing, whatever we're sharing, because it's a person to person thing at the end of the day. And, maybe that was a bit much to say to some random park ranger guy in a state park, but that's how I feel. I think that, especially as a storyteller, as a content writer, as a marketing writer, I'm talking to people. I'm not trying to sell them things as much as I'm trying to share something with them and say, here's information you might need to make a decision about your life, your needs, your family, your community, whatever. Go forth and do what you will with this, but it's here. And that's the sort of thing that gets results in my experience. So I think that even if we don't realize it, because I don't think a lot of people do realize it, because we live in a very individualistic society, unfortunately, but even if people don't realize it, we do need other people. We want and need other people. We just have to get past the, hyper individualism that we've been fed, understandably. But I think, I think about the whole, it takes a village to raise a child adage. And I think it's just, if you just cut off the to raise a child, it does take a village to just exist. We depend on each other. We're very interdependent, whether we want to agree with it or not. I'm going to a concert tonight and I couldn't get there without the guy that drives the train. That's just, I might never meet this person, but I need them to get me where I'm going. And I live near my family because we depend on one another. We help each other out. And it's just, I don't know. I think that when you choose to be authentic, you choose to let people into your little bubble, which is scary sometimes, but the pros nearly always outweigh the cons, because we do need each other. Humans, we're social creatures. We're not made to be by ourselves. And when we try to be by ourselves, it's just sad.
It really is sad. And I'll tell you, I personally think that what I do, even though now you can get a lot of free things online, right? You can get a workout, you can listen to podcasts and get a lot of insight. I do think people crave community. They crave that connection of like, I just need to talk to somebody. Like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I need to have somebody that I can share, be real, not be judged, be in a safe place, and feel human.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the more we see that technology taking over our life, the more we pull away. But humans are humans, and we're social beings. We are not meant to be in a room by ourselves. And I think the increase that we see, what we saw in COVID with the increase in mental health issues, a lot of that was related to isolation.
Yeah.
Okay, at least through technology, we have some interaction, but it is not the same as.
It's not the same. No, not at all.
Well, Amanda, we can keep talking. I feel like I can always say that. I have such fascinating guests such as yourself. We can just keep going and going. But let's shift gears and let's go to favorite quote or a piece of advice that you want to share with our audience. Anything.
Oh my goodness. I think while we're on the topic of authenticity, because, I serve in a mentorship capacity in a couple of different ways to young people, mostly middle schoolers, ironically. And, when you're in middle school, when you're at any age, but especially middle school, and you're looking up to, me in my mid-20s standing there, I've had some young people ask me, usually it's while they're gesturing at me, how can you be like that and not get bullied, which is a fair question and also makes me deeply sad because, no kid should be bullied for trying to be themselves. But the thing that I always tell them is some variation of, you have to make a conscious choice daily to care less about what other people think of you and more about if you can be happy with yourself at the end of the day. There have been times when I've gone out, been with friends, or gone, to, done a meeting or whatever, and I can feel myself kind of slipping behind the old mask of, performative personhood. And I get home and I look at myself in the mirror and I go, that wasn't my best work. And it's not really that it's work. It's a conscious decision to choose to just be yourself. And over time, it becomes less of a conscious decision and more of a habit. And sometimes there are tangible things that go along with that. For instance, I used to wear a full face of makeup every single day because that was how I believe society wanted me to conform. And I am not judging anyone who chooses to do that because they like how they look. If you find empowerment to that, you go. But that was not the reason I was doing it. I was doing it because I thought it was what was expected of me. And so I chose to stop wearing makeup. And while that's not maybe a monumental thing to some people, it was an outward symbol of my internal conscious choice to be who I wanted to be. And who I wanted to be did not want to wear makeup, because wearing makeup was tiring. I couldn't touch my face, which you shouldn't touch your face, but I did anyway. I couldn't hug people without worrying about it getting off on their clothes. And that was the final straw for me. If I can't hug the people I love without being more stressed out about my makeup coming off than about like connecting with another human, I was doing it wrong. And so I stopped wearing makeup, and my skin got better, but more importantly, so did my internal sense of self. And, you know, that's a very long-winded way of saying the piece of advice I always hope people leave with from me in these kinds of conversations is actively choosing to be yourself in a world that overtly or covertly discourages you from it is one of the most radical acts of self-acceptance you can choose. And especially for women, especially for queer people, people of color, in a world where we, as women are trained to wear a face, perform things a certain way, or else. The or else is becoming so what. And I'm very glad to see that as someone who could care less about what society ascribes to me. I'm just doing my business. I'm about my business. They can do whatever they want.
I would say, you having gone through my personal experience and unleashing my authenticity and taking it to a whole different level, one of the most empowering things that has happened is letting go of what others think.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't like me, we don't have to hang out. We don't have to spend time together. You don't have to follow me. That is perfectly okay. Another key thing is I do not take it personally. We all have right? And I love that you made about makeup, because I've never been a makeup type of gal. And I don't know, some time ago I posted a picture of me in Bali. I have this thing about it continuously bothered me of how there is this, your hair has to look a certain way in a corporate environment. And I'm like, who said your hair should look like this or like that? Somebody came up with that, and now it's a thing. And I was on vacation in Bali, and I woke up to do a photo shoot, and my hair looked so pretty. My hair is straight as sticks, and it actually had these beautiful curls. And I was like, oh, and I gotta tell you, I did the photo shoot without combing my hair, and there is a picture of me in the back with the beautiful curls. And that picture means to me so much more, not because of the picture itself, but because of the meaning I assigned to that picture of like, that is my rebellious moment of getting up and doing a whole professional photo shoot without my hair being combed. Now, to what you said, I don't advocate, don't comb your hair or do anything to your hair. Do your hair whatever is right for you. Do your makeup way, whatever is right for you. Live your life the way you want to.
I think choosing to show up as yourself because you want to versus funneling everything through, okay, what are other people going to think about me first is, I think, one of the first steps to that radical authenticity. Because if you stop funneling yourself through the invisible lens of what people might or might not think, at best, that's going to do wonders for your mental health. But at worst, how presumptuous of you to assume you know what everyone who's looking at you is thinking. Like, I can't control anything that goes on in anyone else's brain. If it comes out their mouth, I can respond to that. But what people think of me, I don't have any control over, and it's quite exhausting to try. And I mean, speaking as someone with anxiety, it's way, way easier to just choose to stop caring because you can't control it anyway. And how presumptuous of me to assume that I could try. Like, that's just silly. So I just chose to stop, which is so much easier said than done. But
it's a process. You start somewhere and you make your way up. You know what? I've been doing it for several years now, and I can tell it's a continuous process. And like I tell my clients, it's a step up and a step up. And All right, Amanda, what is your definition of rebellious?
Choosing to do something, not do something, or care about something, not care about something, making decisions based off of what you believe to be right, true, correct, instead of just going with it because it's what's always done. I believe that the phrase, it's because it's what it's always done, is not a good reason to do anything. If you have no other reason, you shouldn't be doing it. And unfortunately, I feel that that is the most rebellious thing one can do, especially in this day and age, talking about the boxes like we have been. I think the most rebellious thing you can do is ask more questions. Maybe that's just because I used to be a journalist, but there you go.
That nerdy curiosity of the
yes. That's a much better way of saying it than shameless nosiness, which is what I was like as a child. I was shamelessly nosy.
It's how you phrase it and
exactly.
Perspective. See, there we go.
Exactly.
Amanda, where can people follow you and find you online, connect you, ask you questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I hang out on LinkedIn. I post every so often, kind of going along with authenticity. I don't force myself to show up and post the same stuff everyone else in my niches, but I am on LinkedIn. You can find me the same place as my website. Everything is Amanda J. Lien. J is my middle initial for Joy. And you can find me there under that moniker on LinkedIn and on my website, where you can also see my portfolio and all of the crazy, colorful things I get to do for clients, which is awesome.
Yes. Amanda, such a joy talking to you. And what a hot topic. I loved our conversation. I love getting to know you better. You guys, thank you for listening. Share with a friend who needs to hear this message. Ask any questions that you might have. And of course, most importantly, do not forget to stay rebellious. We will see you next time. Bye. Can't get enough of those rebellious conversations? Do make sure you subscribe, like, and share with your friends.